Hey everybody, this is Elaine Rasmussen. We are celebrating 1 year of the Do Different Better show. I could not have done it without you. Thank you so much. Today we're going to be playing some of our favorite moments from past episodes. So enjoy and can't wait to see you in next year. Welcome to Do Different Better show, where we talk about wealth, wisdom, and money moves, making finance simple for everyday people. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, founder and CEO of Social Impact Now, Connect Up Institute, and general partner of the Integrated Capital Fund. Thank you for joining me today. In our first episode, we'll talk about what this show is all about. I'm also going to share with you my background and how I got into finance, but I'm also going to share with you my journey with money, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But first, a little more about this show. Do Different Better is a no-nonsense, groundbreaking show dedicated to financial and wealth education tailored for everyday people. This show empowers you with practical insights, strategies, and expert advice to achieve financial success and build wealth. Every episode presents profound conversations with industry experts, thought leaders, accomplished entrepreneurs. These discussions delve into crucial things like banking, budgeting, investing, real estate, retirement, wealth building, entrepreneurship, and so much more. But also we're going to talk about innovations in the finance sector and how they might impact your personal bottom line or make your life easier. We'll talk about financial and wealth education that is tailored for everyday people, and professionals might learn a thing or two as well. Expect a straightforward yet insightful exploration on all things finance on this show. I'll interview a wide variety of people representing traditional as well as some innovative finance and banking. I'll also talk to regular people like you and me about our money journey and their experience that have shaped their relationship with money. Once again, good or bad. There will be something to learn for everyone. And finally, we'll break down banking and finance jargon and give you these practical and tactical and brilliant ways to align your money with your values. Me and my guests will inspire you to adopt a financial mindset that empowers you to be more strategic about how you spend your time, your talent, and your treasure. The show might make you laugh, might make you cry, but you'll learn some stuff. But most importantly, I hope this show drives you to transform your relationship with money and finance in all the ways that it shows up in your life, where you live, where you work, and where you play. So why this show and why now? I thought it was really important that we don't talk about money enough, but it is the thing that is pervasive in our life. We deal with money almost every single second of the day. If we're not doing a Lyft and sending money to the Lyft driver, we're in a restaurant, we're buying lunch, we're balancing our checkbook or not balancing our checkbook, but we are interfacing with money. We put money into a 401k, but we have no idea where is our money actually going once we take it out of our checking account or out of our paycheck and put it into our 401k. Money is all around us, but it is a thing that we talk about the least. And I have found in doing the work that I do that it's really valuable and important to really make these connections between how do we manage and think about our money today and where did it all start? What were those stories or what were those experiences that we don't even know shape how we think about money? It informs our financial insecurity. It informs if we might have a cavalier attitude towards money. But all of those things influence our decisions in making money. And then when we take on a partner and they have a different money story, very rarely do couples talk about their money story and their money journey so that they can come to some understanding, which is why many relationships fall apart because of money. It's not necessarily the lack of having it, but that there hasn't been a real conversation about what are the various perspectives that people are bringing. And quite frankly, what is the baggage that they're bringing to the conversation of money? So this show I thought was really important. We've just come out of a pandemic. And there's a lot of insecurity. There's lots of layoffs that are happening. So I really thought that the time was really perfect at this moment to sort of talk about and unpack money, but also finance. I think when we think about finance, it's always we think about investors, and investors are really these wealthy people who know so much more than us regular working everyday people. But I will just tell you, I've met a lot of these investors. Many of them are no more smarter than you are. And quite frankly, everyone is an investor. That's my philosophy. When you decide to go to Target versus Walmart, you are making an investment. You are choosing to support a certain way of thinking, a certain way of being, or a representation of a brand. That is making an investment, right? You buy something at a particular place that you could buy probably almost anywhere, but you chose to buy it at that place for one reason or another. That's an investment where you choose to put your money as far as a financial institution. Where you bank, I like to say, where does your money sleep at night? Is your money in a financial institution that is working against your interests or working for your interests? When we think about credit unions versus traditional banks versus a community bank, all of those work a little bit different. While they all may offer financial services, what is happening with that money and how is it coming to or from your community? So once again, we have all of these things that are related to money that we don't necessarily talk about. And so I'm hoping that this show is really timely and insightful of us generating more conversations, building some more transparency around money, and having us really lift the veil around the secrecy and the taboo of talking about money, because it has such a big influence on all of our lives. I really want us to be talking about it more. How does it influence us? Where do we get it? How do we get it? How do we think about it? How can we understand how money actually moves, right? When we see gas prices go up, what is that an indication of? When we see the price of milk go up, what is that an indication of, right? There are things that you can kind of predict about our economy by just noticing some everyday things about how money is or isn't moving, right? So we're going to unpack all of that, and we're going to make it really easy to understand, which is probably another thing. People are intimidated about the conversation of money. Maybe you have the good fortune of having a wealth advisor, and you probably don't understand half the word that they're saying. Well, we're going to break all of it down and make it simple, easy to understand. We're going to try to not use terms that are complicated. And if we do, we'll try to define those terms in the easiest way possible. But I really want to encourage you to send me some DMs on my social media channels. I really want you to comment, but email me, send me anything. If there's a question that you have, we will bring it to this show. This is such a passion of mine. I think it's so important and so valuable. And it's had such a huge impact on my life of reimagineering my relationship with money. I just know the benefit it served me, and I hope that this will serve you. If there's something you want us to talk about, please let me know. Hit me up on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Social Impact Now, or you can find me at Money Moves Maven. You can also go to my company website, Social Impact Now, at www.socialimpactnow.com. You can support my nonprofit at Connect Up Institute, which is www.connectupmn, as in Minnesota.org. And you can see all the wonderful work that we do around working with entrepreneurs and talking with impact investors, and really getting impact investors, as well as regular investors, to really reimagine how they work with communities of color, how they work with small businesses, and powering more money to go into those opportunities.
You're listening to the special one-year anniversary episode of the Do Different Better show. Stay tuned, as up next we'll play back more of our favorite clips.
Hey everybody, this is Elaine Rasmussen. We are celebrating 1 year of the Do Different Better show. I could not have done it without you. Thank you so much. Today we're going to be playing some of our favorite moments from past episodes. So enjoy and can't wait to see you in next year.
This week, we are talking about lending and borrowing, and you're going to meet two people who are working to make a difference in how to bring economic justice to finance. My guests today are Chelsea McDaniel, Director of Impact Investing, and Cristina Lara Agudelo, you have to correct me, Manager of Lending Partnerships of Common Future. So my first guest, I'm going to give a little bit of bio, and then I'm going to turn it over to them to give a little bit of introduction of themselves. Christina is the Lending Partnership Manager of Common Future. She supports Common Future's impact investing team by working with community-rooted organizations to co-create loan funds that increase access and affordability and shift power and choice and ownership to communities. She's passionate about ensuring the economy serves all. Prior to Common Future, Christina was the program manager for Economic and Inequality Initiative at Uncharted, where she designed and executed a 6-month accelerator program for entrepreneurs working to close the wealth gap in the United States. And we'll hear more about Chelsea in just a moment. First of all, I want to ask both of you I'll start with Chelsea. Tell us a little bit about who you are, where you work, and what do you do there?
Great. First, well, thanks for having us. Chelsea McDaniel. I'm the Director of Impact Investments at Common Future. I oversee our partnerships, which Christina will talk to you a little bit more about later, and our intermediated investments, where we're working with first-time or early-stage fund managers to get them patient capital with flexible terms, basically so they can do the work they need to do in community.
Awesome. Thank you. And Christina, tell us a little bit more about what you do. I read your bio, but let's get a little bit more sticky.
Yeah, thanks, Elaine. And I'm super excited to be here. Like you mentioned, I'm the Lending Partnerships Manager at Common Future. I've had a couple of roles here at Common Future since I came over in the merger with Uncharted. I've been here for about 2 years since then. As a Lending Partnerships Manager, I really try to work with a lot of our lending partners, current and potential, to make sure that their loan funds are running well and that we're measuring the impact of their portfolios, as well as with new potential partners to co-create the terms and the underwriting criteria for really effective loan funds that get capital into the communities that we want to see more capital and better capital in as well.
Thank you. That's amazing. And we will definitely talk about how we actually know each other. So first I want to, we'll get into more details about the work. But first, in last week's episode, I shared a lot about how I landed into social impact and social finance work. Christina, how did you get into social impact?
After I graduated from business school, I knew I wanted to be in social impact, but many of the resources for this line of work were not really available at my institution, which I was a little disappointed at. But I decided to do a year of service with AmeriCorps, where I taught 7th grade math in Wilmington, Delaware. And after finishing up my year of service, I got an offer to join an organization called Uncharted, which now no longer exists because we're under the same umbrella as Common Future. And I worked on their community engagement and collective impact team, where I supported very hyper-local projects in Denver, Colorado, that empowered local residents to really take ownership of what our acceleration ecosystem looked like there. And then I went on to help design and build our Economic Inequality Accelerator program, which now still exists kind of in the Common Future realm. And I'm happy to talk about that a little bit later when we talk about Common Future. And then at Common Future, I started off supporting our participatory investing work, creating a toolkit on how funders could implement participatory investing into their work before moving on to the investments team.
And I want to put a pin in that participatory funding. I think that's going to be an interesting concept that we can talk a little bit more about as well. And Chelsea, how did you get into finance?
Yeah, mine was a little bit more of a wandering path, maybe maybe I was lost for a little bit, hence the wandering. I was thinking about this, and I think I really started like organizing around community, and particularly community environmental rights. I grew up in Sacramento, California, right next to a levee, and it seemed that there were always developers trying to build there without very many precautions, and usually it was Black and brown folks going there. So I remember at like 15, like testifying about that, and wouldn't have connected that to any kind of future organizing, finance work. But when I think back, that's probably when it started. And then from there, sort of did some different work around environmental and community organizing for a number of years, and kept seeing how on the one end, we had at that time sort of this emerging ESG, or environmental social governance movement, that was really focused more on like governments and businesses, trying to get in better relationship in those three areas: environmental, social, and governance. And then I was also seeing nonprofits and community organizations that oftentimes were deeply undercapitalized, but just trying and figuring out ways to have this tremendous impact and meet community needs. So something in that, I think, area of how are we financing the things that community actually needs to be able to build and have this positive impact sent me back to business school. From there, I think I really had a chance to delve into this world. I mean, gosh, it's like couple years ago now, that was, I think, still emerging, this kind of impact finance space. And there were people who were actually blending the two and trying to figure out how we do properly capitalize like programs and initiatives and and entities that were working for community benefit. So I got to do that in a number of different ways. I worked for an organization, small startup, that was working on municipal bonds in Black cities and organizing around kind of public money that way. And then recently came on board with Common Future about 6 months ago, and get to oversee all of our investments, both in the partnerships where we work more closely with partners who have a really good understanding and strong understanding of what the community needs are and what the financial gaps are, and help them kind of bring a fund to life. And then working with folks who are first-time fund managers, and standing that up and really stepping into partnership with them and saying, instead of just seeing the risk, we see all the possibility here.
Yeah, one of the things that I find is that everyone I know that does this work, including myself, as Chelsea pointed out, we've all kind of like ended up here. There's no college degree for this kind of work. Everyone I know has fallen into the work by some happenstance path. With Christina, it started off with teaching math, right? With me, when I was 18, I started off as a stock analyst, left finance, went and pursued a 25-year career in marketing and communications. And it was just through some happenstance, found myself in rooms talking about impact investing. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I have a little bit of a finance background, and it seems like what they're talking about really is not impact, and really just starting my inquiry from there. So I find that that's a real common thread with both of you, but also with other folks that I know that are in this field. And I find it fascinating that how we just all kind of like umbrella parachute in to this universe that, quite frankly, one, wasn't really set up to include us, right? And two, can still be, there's a lot of knowledge protection. And so we're having to like beat down these doors to really kind of figure out, how do these things work? There's so many things that are just unsaid. But I want to move on and really kind of get into maybe your own personal story. And this is for whomever would like to answer the question. Think about and share with our listeners, what was your first memory of money, or when did you realize that money had influence? Christina, Chelsea?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to take that. I think my first memory around money was when my family and I immigrated to Canada from Colombia when I was 6. And I remember that my parents had shipped some of our belongings from Colombia on a boat, like you used to do, kind of moving across the world. But the packages were super delayed, like several months. And I remember kind of having new friends from school or people that I didn't really know in the community drop off. It was so nice, drop off toys, clothes, and like household items to hold us over while our stuff came. And at first I didn't really think that I realized like why we had to get help from other people, but my parents like began to explain that the cost of things in Canada was much higher than the cost in Colombia. So our lives began to look really, really different than when we were in Colombia and moved to Canada. And I think that realization about the different like purchasing power that you have in different countries was when I was like first realizing that this was conversations that my parents were having for months, but were only just beginning to affect my brother and I. And so I think that's like when I understood a little bit about that.
Yeah, that had to have been a very stark experience. Even as a young person, you have lived a life in a certain way, and then all of a sudden it's a very different. And you know that there's a difference, but you're not really sure. And then you start to learn like, oh, there's this thing that's called money that shows up in your life, and it's happening to you, right? As opposed to you having any sort of agency in it, right? And so when you think about, and this is once again for either of you, when you think about the cultural norms that you've had to navigate coming from Colombia, possibly to Canada, or Chelsea, if you want to jump in here, what are the cultural norms or trauma that you've had to navigate through even doing this work, working with funders who have these lots of money and power and or perceived power actually, and then we're working with some of the folks that are dealing with some of the same stuff we're dealing with. What have you seen or what have you experienced? Either one. It doesn't. Who would like to answer it?
I think one of the most interesting things that has come up working with funders and working on other sides outside of this role of fundraising and in different positions has been that there are these really strong held perceptions of risk. And so there's some, brilliant academics who've kind of coined the idea of a black tax, particularly as it relates to municipal bonds. But I think it's constant throughout our financial system. And it's the way that risk is priced in, right? And the assumption of risk with racialized people. But that comes up in one-on-one conversations too. And so even in 2020, 2021, folks are so excited, really, really wanting to align their investments with investing in particularly Black communities, but BIPOC communities more broadly. And yet the one-on-one conversations lead with, it's almost as if they're talking out of both sides of their mouth. We'd really like to do this. My gosh, is this going to be dangerous? What are some of the risks? How could we possibly scale this? And the same line of thinking that folks can't get out of their way with that. And so I think, that idea of like the maybe long legacy of unworthiness and not of perceived risk. And I don't mean unworthiness in that's these communities haven't been worthy of that, but that has been baked into our financial institutions from the beginning. I think it was a little bit jarring to see how present that still was, right, in the current day. And it's a huge thing to kind of overcome. So we found that like educating folks where they're at and really naming that perception of risk and how that's not reality, and even reorienting how folks are seeing that and what they're bringing and how they can show up as partners who more, I think at the maybe further along are like, what's the risk of not doing this? Not
right,
all these perceived risks I have of this community. Yeah.
Exactly. Or unknown perceived risk, right? I just had somebody yesterday, I was doing a capital readiness accelerator, and I was talking with folks, and they were telling me how recently they had gotten emails. Basically, one person had said this person had put together a beautiful business plan, and the result was this person saying, after months and months and months of not responding to this entrepreneur, this Black female entrepreneur,
was like, yeah, I never really looked at it because I really didn't think that it was really going to go anywhere. And put that in email, put that in writing. And so I said to this person, I would send that to the president of that financial institution. I mean, it's not because you want them to do something about it as far as lending, considering you for a loan or considering you for a line of credit, but to put them on notice, right? To let them know. Well, you have been listening to Do Different Better.
And continuing our celebration of the 1-year anniversary of the Do Different Better show, we'll now play back another one of our favorite clips.
We're going to discuss what you need to know before you invest. It is crucial to be well prepared and informed before making any investment decision. We'll cover how to assess your financial situation, set some realistic goals, and align your investments with your values. So let's dive in. Investing can be an excellent way to grow your wealth and secure your financial future, but it is important to be prepared before you jump in. Making uninformed decisions can lead to unnecessary risks and potential losses, and that's not what we're trying to do. That's why understanding your financial position today and having a clear roadmap is essential for successful investing. And this is where a certified financial planner can come into play. You sometimes will see the letters CFP after someone's name, and that means that they are a professional, kind of like a licensed broker or a licensed doctor. They are certified financial planners. This is somebody who's going to sit down with you. They're going to talk with you. They're going to hear your story. They're going to talk to you about what are your goals for yourself, for your children, how long, what is the typical life expectancy, and how much money will you need as you move towards the third chapter of your life? What is that going to look like, and how much money are you going to need to live the life that you're designing for yourself? So think of investment as preparing you for a road trip. Any kind of, like any other journey, you wouldn't want to start on a road trip without checking the car, making sure like the air is in the tires, that you've got windshield wiper juice, that make sure that there's gas in the car. You might even plan your route for some of us, or some of us may be passenger princesses and we let somebody else do that. But somebody is doing it, and making sure that you pack for your essentials. I know when we go up to the cabin, before the town where our cabin was built up, I had a whole packing list. We would go to Sam's Club, or we would go to Costco, we would go to the grocery store, pack up the coolers, but I had a whole checklist. I even had a packing list for every time we went to the cabin. I'm like, oh, okay, we're going to need the 2 towels. We're going to need, right? This is kind of very similar. So before you invest, you need to ensure that you have as much of the necessary information and resources that you need as possible. So how do you assess your financial situation? Let's start by preparing to invest. The first step is preparing to invest, assessing your financial situation. This involves understanding how much money you have available to invest without compromising your daily expenses or emergency savings. One of the things that I was told when I was younger is think about what is the amount that you can lose, right? Especially if you're doing an investment that may be not a part of the traditional investments that we talked about earlier. If you're doing something that's alternative, or maybe that's a little bit more experimental or new to the market, I've made some investments in companies, but I really came with the perspective of, if I never see this money, I'm going to be okay. Right now, that's not the plan. The plan is that I have some kind of return on investment, but I've made some investments. I thought they were great companies. I still am friends with the founders. They just didn't make it for a lot of different reasons, right? It may have been external factors. COVID was an external factor for a lot of upstart businesses. And while they may have had a great idea, it was bad timing, right? They may have had a great team, but it was bad timing due to external resources. Opening a massage parlor or a massage franchise in the middle of COVID was not the best idea. And there's nothing you can do about that, right? So one of the things that you can do is start by creating a budget that outlines your income,
your expenses, and any other existing savings or other ways that maybe you might be expecting an inheritance at some point in time. Maybe you are expecting bonuses at certain points of your annual year because you're on commission, or you get merit bonuses where you work. Think about all of those things. This will start to give you a very clear picture of your financial health and help you determine how much money you can comfortably allocate to assets. And with your wealth advisor, your investment advisor, or your financial planner, you can start to think about how do you want to carve up that set of money. So once again, let's think about $10,000. You have $10,000 to invest. Your financial planner may sit down with you and say, okay, what's the return you're looking to have on this money? How long do you want this? How long are you willing to let this money sit? Are you going to need this money in a year from now because you're doing renovations in your house? Are you going to need this money 4 years from now because you've got a kid going to college? How does this money need to work for you, right? The next thing to do is to really set some realistic financial goals. What do you want to achieve with your investment? Like I was just saying. Are you saving for retirement? Are you saving for a down payment on a house or your grandchild's education? When you have some specific goals, this will help guide your investment strategy and help you stay focused, right? But it's also just as important to understand the potential risk and losses associated with investing. No investment is completely risk-free. If anyone tells you they've got a sure thing, they're lying. It's crucial to be prepared for the possibility of losing some or all of your investment. Understanding your risk tolerance, meaning how much risk you're willing to take or are able to take, will help you make better investment decisions. So typically the rule of thumb is when you're younger, you can take more risks because the idea is that you have more time to make up any losses, meaning that over the course, let's say we're looking at somebody who's 25 years old, may have a more higher risk tolerance for losing money because let's say at 30, they lose all their investments. They lose all their money from their investments. Well, they're 30. The idea is, all things being equal, they have all this extra time to go and make up whatever money they lost, plus make some more. Now, somebody who's now moving into their 60s, their 70s, there's not as much window. So at that point, typically the advice that's given is let's be a lot more conservative with your money because now this is the money you have to live on because the presumption is you may either stop working or significantly reduce your working hours or your working income. So your advisor might say to you, hey, since you're older, we don't want to put your money at risk. We're going to put your money into things that have a very slow, steady rate of return, right? Meaning maybe it's got a 5% rate of return as opposed to the stock market may have an 8 to 12% return. Or if you invest in a venture fund, maybe there's a 20 or 30 X rate of return. So these are how the financial planners will start to think about your particular situation, not only where you are in life financially, but where you are in your life chronologically and help you inform you on what kinds of decisions that you can make. But understanding your risk tolerance and how much you're willing to take will definitely make you make better investment choices. Here's another fun fact. Women are more likely than men to invest in a long-term perspective, which can lead to more stable and consistent returns. This patient approach often helps women weather market fluctuations better and achieve their financial goals over time, right? Maybe this goes to what we talked about earlier of just not feeling confident and being able to make lots of different maneuvers. Maybe they're too busy because they're not only working their job and they are raising children, but the fact of the matter is women are much more patient and they leave their money and let it sit and let it grow and let it mature as opposed to constantly making new opportunities or investment choices. Not saying that that's bad, right? I'm just saying that there is research that says how women invest and how men invest is different. But also I think the other thing that might play into this is women live longer. That's just a statistical fact. And so women have to think more longitudinally about their financial well-being, perhaps than men.
I think the average now is women live on average 8 years longer than men. So when you think about that, you're going to be 8 years on your own, without spousal income, whether that's pensions, whether that's Social Security. Those are significantly reduced once your partner passes away. So in thinking about that, okay, as a woman, I've got to be thinking about how do I make up that income? So I really need my investments to be safe, secure, and produce the income that I need. So now let's talk about reflecting on your values in your investments. Another important aspect of investment readiness is aligning your investments with your personal values. Not everybody believes this as a tactic. This is something that's really important to me, and I invite you to think about adopting it for you.
You're listening to the special one-year anniversary episode of the Do Different Better show. Stay tuned, as up next we'll play back more of our favorite clips.
Hey everybody, this is Elaine Rasmussen. We are celebrating 1 year of the Do Different Better show. I could not have done it without you. Thank you so much. Today we're going to be playing some of our favorite moments from past episodes. So enjoy, and can't wait to see you in next year.
This segment, I will be focused on preparing teens ages 15 to 18 for financial independence. This is a really critical time to introduce them to more advanced financial concepts and real world responsibilities. Let's dive into budgeting, planning, credit, and loans, and some engaging fun facts and historical perspectives. So let's get into it. For older teens, the focus really begins to shift in preparing them for financial independence. They might be going off to college, they might be going off to missionary, they might be going off living a year abroad. Whatever that is, this is the time to introduce them to more advanced concepts around real world financial responsibilities. And let's start with budgeting and planning. I will just tell you, no one in my house, I was the first person to go to college. No one in my house talked about budgeting and planning, and I got into a lot of trouble in college, and I'll talk a little bit about that, right? But with budgeting and planning, teach them to create a detailed budget. If you're not good at that or you've never done that, this is a great time for you to learn. It's a time for you to sit down and think about, like, walk them through what kind of income are they getting, maybe from their part-time job, from grandma and grandpa, and what are their expenses, like their phone bill or their car insurance. You may be paying that, but what you want to do is, even if you're paying that for them right now, have them build a budget, because the idea is that eventually they're going to start paying for that on their own. And it's good for them to know that these are expenses, and for you to say, we're going to pay this phone bill or this car insurance up until this age. But now they're starting to understand, while they may not have to pay it now, they're going to eventually have to pay it. So getting some grounding of saving now for the eventuality that they're going to have this extra expense that they're not having to pay now is going to be an amazing gift that you can give them. But this will help them to show them how to allocate their money wisely to cover all the necessary expenses while also saving for the future. Did you know that the concept of budgeting dates back to ancient Egypt, where scribes kept detailed records of the pharaoh's wealth and his expenditures? So this isn't something new. This isn't something that you're trying to shove down your throat. This is actually just really good to do no matter what age you are. The next thing is thinking about planning for future experiences. So talk to them about saving for college or a car or travel. I know for me, I had to pay my way through school. My parents were not in a financial position to help me pay for school. They were working class folks and just did not have it between raising my brother and myself. They were not able to give us that gift. So I had to pay for college on my own. And it would have just been really great if I had been learning some of those lessons years before. So by the time I got to college, I really had a good understanding of how to do that. I had to learn through the school of hard knocks, right? But by having this conversation, you can talk with them and help them start to set realistic savings goals and create a plan for them to achieve those goals. One great thing is using a visual savings tracker, like a thermometer. Once again, there's lots of digital tools that help you see their progress, and for them to see their progress and how they're moving towards their goals. And that in and of itself can be very motivating and making the savings process even more tangible. So now
Let's move into credit and loans. It's really important to explain how credit works and the importance of a good credit score and the risks of debt. Teaching them about the responsibility of credit card use and the impact of interest and rates on debt, especially if they don't make payments on time or if they don't pay off the balance, right? So one of the things when I don't know if this happens anymore, but when I go to college, it was very common. The first day of college, there's a long line in the quad of credit card companies, and they're all itching for you to sign up for your credit card. They're like, it's almost like fresh meat, right? And they're all sitting there, and I got a credit card and it was like, woohoo, free money. And well, it's not really free, right? And I spent up the card, and I actually had a card that didn't really have a limit because it was a card that I could just keep charging, but I was responsible for making the balance at the end of the month. Well, that part went in one ear and out the other. And I got myself into a big hole that I eventually had to get myself out of. But it took a while, and I dodged the creditors for a while and really eventually had to face the music. But by that time, the interest had grown so much, I think it probably doubled or tripled what I owed the company. So once again, even if this isn't a conversation that you've been attuned to, you can find resources to help you have that conversation. I think if you have a bank account at a credit union or at a traditional bank, sitting down with them and asking the banker to talk about this will help you as well as your kid, especially if this isn't your forte. You know, there's this historical perspective in the African community that this concept of collective credit and savings through organizations like credit unions has been really, really crucial. These institutions provide access to credit when mainstream banks often denied money to different kinds of communities, particularly immigrant communities, Black families, Native American families. So this whole idea of really understanding credit and having access to credit could be a really, really valuable conversation. Then there's the all-encompassing student loans. So I once again had no one to tell me, walk me through student loans. Yes, there's the financial aid officer, but the financial aid officer at the school really just gives you the bare bones. Or like, hey, this is how much you owe. This is what you're going to need to pay, if they even have that conversation. And they really don't really go into like, what is the impact and what are some ways that you need to think about your student loans and how can they, what does it mean and when is it due and how you should be paying that and factoring that into your budget. Nobody had any of those conversations with me. It's really important to understand the long-term commitment of a student loan and how to manage them effectively. The first student loan program in the United States was created in 1958 through the National Defense Education Act, aimed at producing more scientists and engineers during the Cold War, which is the 70s and the 80s. That's such an interesting thing. I went to a school that was actually set up for, I graduated from Woodbury University, and it was actually set up for vets that were coming back from all the wars, from World War II all the way up to the Korean War. And so there was this real emphasis on making sure that people are able to go to school, even though they may not have had the cash to pay for it. But once again, as we've seen this national get privatized, the student loan business get privatized and move away from the government, you know, you've got to be more mindful and more careful about all the things that are involved in what you're signing up for. And not only what your child is signing up for, but what are you on the hook for? So I think that's another reason why you want to be a part of the conversation, the student loan conversation, because as a minor, there are certain responsibilities that you hold, and you just want to be clear about what those are and what those implications are.
And continuing our celebration of the 1-year anniversary of the Do Different Better show, we'll now play back another one of our favorite clips.
In this segment, we're going to tackle a critical aspect of working with a financial advisor: how they get paid, and how you can find the perfect fit for your financial needs. Understanding this can save you money and help you make the best choice for your financial journey. So let's get started. All right, let's jump to the nitty-gritty. How are financial advisors compensated? Knowing this can help you choose an advisor whose interests align with yours. You would be surprised. I have worked with a number of wealthy people, and when I ask them the question, how is your advisor paid? I cannot tell you how many times they don't know. They don't know. which I'm surprised. I would never hire somebody and not know how I'm paying them. So we're going to get into it. So if you think that you're intimidated, you're not the only one, but I'm going to walk you through it. Okay. So the first one is fee-only advisors. Fee-only advisors are paid directly by their clients, either as a percentage of their assets under management, and you may see the word AUM or the abbreviation AUM, that's assets under management, which is a fancy way of saying how much of their assets they're managing for you. And this could be, so they could either charge you as a percentage of assets under management, they can charge you an hourly rate, or they can charge you a flat fee. And that flat fee might be annual. The flat fee could be a monthly fee. These are why you want to ask this question so that you understand what that is. They do not receive commissions or any other incentives for recommending specific products. This structure helps ensure their advice is unbiased and in your best interest. So, for example, if you have $500,000 in assets, $500,000, and your advisor charges you 1% AUM, assets under management, then you will pay $5,000 annually for their services. And how that's paid, they might have ways for you to figure that out, whether it's quarterly or it's upfront, or if it's 6 months upfront, 6 months, like your insurance. But these are all the things that you can find out when you talk to your advisor. The next kind is commission-based advisors. Commission-based advisors earn money by selling financial products like mutual funds, insurance policies, or annuities. They receive commissions on each product that they sell. While this can lead to potential conflicts of interest, it's important to ask the right questions to ensure their recommendations align with your goals. And here's a tip. Always ask if the products they recommend are the best options for you, or if there are lower cost alternatives available, right? So then there's number 3, which are fee-based advisors. Fee-based advisors charge a combination of fees and commissions. They may receive a fee for their advice, but also earn commission on the products that they sell. This can be sort of a middle ground, but be sure that you understand how they are compensated, once again, to ensure that their advice remains unbiased. Or if it's not biased, or if you feel that it's not biased, that you at least are aware of that and you're making a decision knowing that there might be a potential. So why do some advisors get paid on commission? Imagine you're at the store and the salesperson helps you pick out a new phone. If you buy that phone, the person gets a bonus. The bonus is called a commission. Some financial advisors work in a very similar way. They help you pick out financial products like mutual funds or insurance policies. And when you buy these products, they get a commission from the company that sells them, because not the company that they work for may not have the extent of all the things that you may need to get you going on to reach your financial goals. So how does it work? 1, they make a recommendation. The advisor recommends a certain product to you. 2, you decide to buy one or many of these products. 3, the company selling the product, which is typically a third party, but it could be the company that they work for, pays the advisor for a commission for making the sale, right? So for example, if an advisor helps you buy a mutual fund, they might get a small percentage of the money you invest as a commission, right? So, but the commission typically is not coming paid by you. It is paid by the other company that the product belongs to, right? So here are some things that I want you to be aware of, right? While many commission-based advisors are honest and want to help you, there are a few things you want to watch out for. The first is potential conflicts of interest. And you can straight up ask them, is this a conflict of interest, right? Because advisors earn money from selling specific products, they might unknowingly or knowingly recommend products that earn them a higher commission instead of what's best for you. So by asking, being direct and saying, are you receiving a commission from this? they should just be disclosing that to you, right? They should be disclosing it whether you ask them or not, but you should always ask, right? For example, if an advisor earns a higher commission from selling Fund A compared to Fund B, they might push you for Fund A, even if Fund B is actually a better choice for you.
Thanks so much for listening to the 1-year anniversary of the Do Different Better show. Coming up in future weeks, Elaine will have more new content.